Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who can't believe we call this theater.
Tim Longo.
Yep, got to silence that inner critic of yours so that we can talk about Psychonauts.
I've waited my whole life to play a level completely about theater.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, Final Fantasy VI had some theater.
I was also going to say Hitman.
Hitman, yeah, opera,
the opera level. I mean,
both of them operas actually.
Yeah, I consider that theater. Really, I mean,
yeah, you can.
It's like boxing is like dancing, but they hit each other.
No, we're not. Nope. Okay, you lost me there. Now I'm back to no, they're separate.
Okay.
There actually was a pretty good theater sequence in Witcher 3, actually.
Haven't
where
gotten
you actually now we're totally off the rails, but because we're about to talk about a theater level, you are I forget, there is a script and you're supposed to, I forget how you get the right lines, but it's like a dialogue tree,
one of those,
puzzle thing where you're like, say the right lines in the right orders, and of course he's performing, Geralt is performing, so I thought it was really well done, and it was a nice little distraction, and it's in the middle of...
There's one of those in Wolfenstein as well, the Machine Games one, the first one, I think it is. It's quite something. Yeah.
What? I didn't get that far.
And you're auditioning for a particular leader, which I just won't get. It's very close. It's right before you go to the moon, Tim, I believe. It's in fact how you're getting to the moon.
I should go back. And play.
Man, those games, I will say, they are.
I know you're a fan. Yeah.
I'm a fan because they're insane. But anyway, speaking of insanity, let's go to Psychonauts. How about that for a transition back from our segue? We're going to talk about some of the levels, and then talk sort of some last notes about the sort of play of the game, and then we'll turn to our takeaways because this is our fourth and final week. Let's first talk a little bit about finishing up Boyd, because we had not finished the Milkman level before the last episode. We had both played some of it, about half of it, probably for each of us. I had forgotten, of course, the clairvoyance to get the code, which is an excellent get the door code.
Very good.
As we mentioned, we should also mention last week we had Clint Hawking, and we talked about getting door codes there as well, quite a bit, as it turns out, because it was sort of the inspiration for what needed to be done. So if you haven't listened to that was in connection with Splinter Cell. Go back and give it a listen. So it's been a few weeks since we've talked Psychonauts.
Yeah, and I think we had a week off and had a Discord game club maybe.
That's correct.
Yeah, the door code story for that is definitely worth listening to, because it is funny how I'm sure it wasn't the only one, but that was the example he used to pull on that thread to what basically was a catalyst for them to think completely differently about things. So that was cool. Yeah, and this one, I mean, with this level and Boyd's level, I very much had, which is exactly, I'm sure, what they intended, and maybe some people who get stuck on this puzzle wouldn't have this experience, but for me it was very much like, oh, I wonder if I can actually do this,
right? And
then when I did it, it worked, and it was the solution. I felt so smart,
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be a wall for people, but if it does come together, that's, I assume, why adventure game puzzles are so difficult to make. For everybody. Sometimes it stumps people, and sometimes it makes people feel smart. So I lucked out on that one. Yeah,
I remember when we talked with Tim and Dave about what Day of the Tentacle, I guess, that there was one about the rain washing the car.
Yeah,
and Dave was, Tim was like, yeah, oh boy, that sounds really tough. And Dave's like, but I gave a hint. There's a hint in the dialogue about how every time you wash your car it rains. And Tim was like, oh yeah, that's totally fair.
I got stuck on that one.
Yeah.
So it wasn't fair for me.
Yeah. So, well, and you probably had never heard that, which I think was part of it. Is like, when I heard that, I was like, Oh yeah, that's something my dad used to say whenever he would wash the cars. It would rain, um, so it stuck in my mind because it had a personal connection.
Yeah,
But
right.
in a way that it would just maybe breeze by a lot of players. And
Well, humor. I think humor in general, and Psychonauts is a similar thing. It's like the humor is so contextual for you as a person, right?
right, of
It's just
course,
any joke. It's like a joke's going to land or it's not, kind of based on who you are. Not every joke is going to make everybody laugh, and then if the joke is also related to a hint or a clue, then it's like, yeah, it's good that people go after it. It's just I can't imagine it being
yeah,
challenging.
it's tough. It's tough to even imagine doing that. I mean, I'm a coder. I don't worry about that problem, but you know,
Well, Eric Wolpass, kind of talked
yeah,
about that, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah,
it's like, we're just trying to make ourselves laugh,
right,
and come what may.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I assume that's kind of what you have to do.
yeah. Yeah, so anyway, getting that landed for you. I'm sure there have been things that don't. There's definitely been times where I've been like, I mean, we talked about it last time where I was like, oh, I expected that to work. Like I expected to be able to use my telekinesis in the lungfish battle.
Hmm.
And there was another point where I expected to be able to use the pyrokinesis in the to get to Gloria. There's like a doorway that's filled with wood, like detritus. And it's like you can punch it, but you can't burn it. And
Oh,
it's very like discussion with Clint of like,
yeah,
yeah, you should be able to get past that in that way. It's not consistent in that way, which is, I guess one of the problems about making these kind of wacky scenarios and settings is the world doesn't behave in a consistent way unless the whoever's putting those things together is constantly thinking about what the player is going to be able to do. Because
yeah.
normally, to get through some debris, you wouldn't just light it on fire with your mind, unless you're, Drew Barrymore. So
So you
it's
got to think about that. Yeah,
you have to always have it in your mind.
not to bring it back to the Clint interview because they sort of have nothing to do with each other, but to your point, they kind of do in that he did talk through that when a level designer or anybody had an idea to add something in, it sounded like they had a phase where they would go through and discuss, okay, that's a cool idea. How would we do this the right way for this game? Meaning that it was systemic and it had all of its, connection points and it was consistent across the game, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And that's an important step to happen in a game like that and a game like this. And I think they just didn't take that step. It was like,
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I expect a lot of this stuff was coming together pretty hot at the end,
sure.
and they were trying to like stitch together. Like I didn't even, for me, and like we can kind of get to stuff, with Gloria. I don't know why, but the interaction with her was somehow out of order, and she was not like well motivated for me. I just like walked into her area. I think I picked up something on the ground, maybe her.
It was
Oh,
a
I think
trophy.
her trophy case, her trophy rather. Yeah,
If you pick that up first, then yeah.
yeah, I think I picked that up first, and then she kind of, I don't know, maybe she was upset or something, and I just threw the door on her forehead because I was like, well, clearly I need to go in her brain as well, so I'll just go ahead and do that now. So it didn't like I didn't have a sense of why I was doing any of that. That's a case where
Yeah.
the key is shown to you. It's part of a 3-part puzzle that you need to get to the asylum above. I don't even know if you got to far enough that you realized that that's what was going on. There's a guard who essentially he's nearsighted, and so you have to dress up enough like Dr. Lobotnik to look like him to when he squints, to try to see you.
Oh, no,
So
I didn't
you're
get
like finding these pieces. One is a claw. He has a claw for a hand, so that's the trophy.
that.
Um,
Oh, wow.
the others are there's an artist who's making a painting. So there's that, and I forget. Oh, and there's like a dirty smock or something that you get from. The straitjacket that the Napoleon complex guy has. Fred Napoleon. He has a straitjacket, and if you have those three things and equip them, then when he squints at you, he sees, and you can see it through clairvoyance, he sees Dr. Lobotnik, more or less, and that's how you get
And that's
past him.
straight up adventure game.
That's straight up adventure game. It's do these three things, but it feels out of order because it's like, oh, I got this trophy and I don't know why.
Right.
I just know she was kind of blocking my way, but maybe she's not. You could probably go past her and into the area and come back, but the ordering just feels weird. It definitely feels a little like the jigsaw puzzle wasn't put together in quite the right order.
Why did I feel like I couldn't? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
it might be that you can't get past her. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, It was even weirder for me because I didn't have invisibility when I talked to her first.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so I did. I was like, well, I'm going in. And they're like, no, you're not. Yeah. Well, I mean, they said, no, you shouldn't.
Are you sure? Yeah.
I was like, so I feel like maybe those dialogue boxes were maybe a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Of like, well, they should be able to go in here, but they need to know.
Yeah,
there's a chance they may not.
We should talk about that main.
Yeah, we can.
That main topic, then we can come back to the levels because it's kind of come up organically. But I'm a player type who doesn't tend to see these gaps, because when I'm given here's a list of collectibles, I will just collect all of them before moving on. Even if we're playing it for the podcast, although I was a little behind on that until this past weekend. But you're sort of like, well, let me just get to the next thing kind of player.
Well, yeah, for me, it depends on the game, really. Like if it's something, and unfortunately for the podcast sake, which I've said many times over 10 years probably, that I'm almost always playing under the gun, even though we had breaks and stuff. Like I had some other things going on, so I just never made the time for it. Never was able to. So I, for the podcast, tend to try to play to progress, and but in my day-to-day gaming life, if I love a game, I definitely will do everything I can to, Breath of the Wild as an example or whatever, right? It's like I didn't 100% that game, but I did almost. And
how does that not just eat at you? It would just eat at me.
But I know. Well, I maybe I'll go back to it someday, but you also run out of steam sometimes. I mean, that to 100%.
I've run out on that game. I've run out of steam on that game more than once. So
yeah, I mean, that to 100% that game. I'm talking all the seeds and stuff. It's like, that's a serious commitment. But yeah. So because I'm playing, to your point, because I'm playing just to progress the story forward for the podcast, I'm not collecting everything, and the economy, as we talked about in pre-show, is sort of based on that.
Yeah.
And so I think I was level 28 when I met her.
Oh, wow.
And you need to be level 30 to get invisibility,
right,
which you need as a critical path in the game. And then the other aspect, which we can talk about after this, is not realizing that the web gun was critical path in Void.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it at the time, and I only had 200 arrowheads anyway, and it's like 800.
Right.
And so this is kind of, I think, what you probably are going to bring up. This is coming down to playtesting and polish on different player types, basically. And whatever player type they focused on would have had plenty of arrowheads and would have been level 50 at this point, but not me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also one of those things that happens where, these levels are probably, as you would, they're being, developed in parallel, by separate level designers. And the way that they play their level is like they give themselves some number of abilities, maybe all the abilities every time, or maybe there's a command and they know, well, I need to have this one and this one or whatever, but they basically have debug, to help them with that. And you get towards the end of, development, and you're like, well, what if they don't have enough? And it's like, well, then we show a message on the screen saying, well, you don't have what you need. Or, this might be frustrating for you. And yeah, that's a definite, I was well ahead of, I mean, I think I was already well into the 60s by the time I
Yeah,
got
you
there.
were way ahead already.
And then the other thing is that, and this is something that I didn't do as much this time playing it, but there is a part of the game at the beginning that we didn't spend as much time on, where you're encouraged to kind of, actually the trophies and achievements really bear this out. You're really encouraged to go around and see all the like character interactions between the kids. And
Oh,
there's like there's something with Bobby Zilch, and I think maybe he's a hit with some girl or something, and it's like the achievement is like maybe it's the hair or something, because he's got that huge I don't know, huge head of hair. Bobby Zilch, weird looking
so
character.
once their brains get taken,
No, before any of that. Oh yeah, you can't do any of that late in the game. That's
it's just
all
done.
that stuff's all you'd have to start a new game to
Oh
get
my
any of that stuff.
goodness!
And none of it is like necessary, right? It's only if you're going to try to get the
But if you didn't look at the achievements ahead of time, that's a bummer.
well, there were no achievements in 2005, right? That was a
fair.
2000, well, later
That was a
2005
2006 problem.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually the same year, but it was the next system, right?
Yeah.
Because it was the 360 that introduced them, and then trophies followed on the PS3 not too long after. So it was not even a thing. Like, some games have had that stuff. We talked about it with Ratchet and Clank, that they eventually had trophies, and they were maybe a motivating force for Sony to do them, but they were basically just challenges that were listed somewhere in the interface. You could just go find it, and there's a list of like, have you tried this? Like, did you find the way you could shoot 3 pteranodons or whatever it was? So yeah, there's a bunch of adventure gamey stuff at the beginning that establishes these characters, and at the end of the game, when you're rebraining them, you're talking to them, to the kids, and if you haven't done that stuff, none of it really lands, because I didn't do it this time, and they're talking about things and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they had relationships that I didn't see. But a lot of the stuff that was blocking for you, especially the arrowheads, you would have, if you invested a lot in that part of the game, you would have been fine for arrowheads, because you would have been running into the different environments at different times of day and like seeing what you could find. And it's kind of like, it expects people who are going to comb over the area whenever big things change, right? And if you're not doing that, you're missing parts of the game. You're missing this progression that's necessary, and they're just not. They hadn't figured that stuff out.
Yeah, it's just them. Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not. It's hard to criticize it in this era because it was something that was just not as fully understood, I think, as we like today. Not that those mistakes aren't made today, but they're less so. But yeah, I mean,
well, especially coming from a PC adventure game developer, So
right. It's just the sure, have all that stuff in there, but just make it much more highly optional.
Yeah,
for those who engage with it rather than critical path stuff,
or make it, make it not so optional. To just make it part of the experience. Integrate it so that it's like, oh, you have to have done that stuff, and then it's more likely. You don't have to force somebody to go pick up the arrowheads, but it's more likely that they will have done so. I mean, there are definitely times when Ford Cruller is telling you, that you can get the item in the store in the main lodge, but he's not telling you, no, you should get that.
Like, that's what I was about to say. The web gun to me was presented as very much this optional collectible device thing,
right?
From what I heard, and so. And we had an email about this, right? And last time we had an episode about this, about the Boyd level.
Yep.
Am I remembering that? Yeah, as far as like it, also being the person, I forget who it was, being stuck. You might remember the email.
I can look it up, but
but anyway, yeah. But I mean, this is
I think it was Sasha, maybe Sasha.
It might, I think it might have been Sasha. Yep. But I mean, I can imagine lots of people, hitting that same spot where it's like, I've kind of been ignoring these webs for a while.
Yeah.
And there's no way they would make me have to go in here. Would they?
Right.
So that
Yeah,
ended
I
up
think they
being.
were expecting a progression motivated player as well, right? Those are the kind of two things. One
Uh-huh.
is somebody's telling you, kind of gently prodding you, and there are some people who will respond to that. And then there's, this other mechanism, which is, well, you got to do these things to rank up, and cobwebs will help you rank up, right? So there's like a person who's interested in that ranking up because you're going to get more abilities and whatever, like,
Yeah.
or your abilities are going to get stronger. Like, I always want to do that stuff just because I would prefer the end of the game to be easier. Not a help in this game, but in general, that's often the case. Like, oh, I'm
Well,
going
and
to have
that's
better ammo. Cool. I will happily spend an hour getting better ammo. It will pay off in the long run. So,
right. And that's the way that you and I played, the different ways that you and I played Dark Souls is a good example of
yeah,
that.
correct. Yeah,
Right?
I, I totally, I
You
totally would just
ground,
grind for an hour.
grind through it,
Yep.
and I would grind through by dying a lot, hitting my
Yeah.
head against the wall until
Yeah.
I got him. So it's like, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, and I'm glad they're dabbling in this stuff. It just was uncharted territory to some degree, where if you're going to integrate critical path stuff into your progression, there's a lot of playtesting that needs to go into that balancing and
Yeah.
tuning. So it's like no one's to blame there. It's just a byproduct.
Yeah, for sure. So things end up being critical path that are not made clear, or critical path, and the high cost of that item is definitely a strange choice. And then, of course, you also at a certain point require clairvoyance in the case of the Boyd level, and then
Yeah,
so you have to level
okay.
to 25 or 20 or
I
whatever
did
it is
have
to get
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you have to level to 30, I think you said, for invisibility.
invisibility. Yeah, so I had to go back and kind of. Actually, in that case, I lucked out because I had already collected a bunch of cards.
I was
And
going to say, you probably had so many side cards.
yeah, and I actually purchased a handful of cores already as well. I just hadn't
Right.
turned them in.
Right.
So luckily, in that case, I was like, oh wait, but I did have to think that through, because I was like, oh, wait a second, do I have to go grind, or will the cards give me this?
Yeah.
I kind of forgot what the cards did,
Right.
and so I went back and turned those in and instantly got where I needed to. But so that was a lucky one, versus the arrowheads. I had 200. I needed to get to 800, so I bought the divining rod. But I spent a good amount of time just
walking around and taking that thing out.
Yeah.
Of course, it gets put away whenever you switch levels.
Oh, don't get me started on the divining rod mechanics.
Oh, I know. It's not. Yeah, I do remember at the time I looked up, like, thinking. I mean, I had the same thing. Well, I was doing it really early in the game, where I hadn't just been naturally amassing lots of arrowheads, from just kind of picking them up everywhere as I went. And I was, I remember actually looking up a FAQ for, like, where are all these dang things, so I could just do it,
because they're probably explicitly placed.
They are explicitly placed,
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I remember, is that somebody was like, "Oh yeah, there's one here, and there's one here, and there's one here," and I just was
it
like,
seems like it. Yeah, it seems like they were level designer
And
placed. Well, even
part of it was
in this,
that I saw a lot of the story because I was doing that. So there's also this, like, it's a
Yeah.
very soft push towards explore the world. Because you're exploring the world, you'll see the kids, you'll talk to the kids, or you'll see their their interactions. I got one of them that had a trophy attached, when I was playing, but I didn't get all of them, and it was because I kind of wanted to get back into the levels, and I wasn't just doing the camp stuff, and yeah, so it's a thing.
I remember, I think in this in this playthrough of yours, in episode 1 or 2, you mentioned you had already gotten the web gun.
Yeah.
And I don't think I said anything out loud at the time, but to myself, I was like, what?
Yeah.
You already have the web gun?
And I had bought the divining rod to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, oh, man,
I just knew there was a collectible, so I'm like, well, I'm going to want that, because then I won't have to go back and play the levels again to get the collectible. I'll just have it, So
in this game,
it's a player type.
Smart.
Player type.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it goes back to what personas are we supporting?
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is it's not. It is. I don't know. I was going to say luxury to have a deep playtesting culture, but it isn't. It's, in our opinion, I think in both of our opinions and our own day job's opinions, it's a requirement,
Yeah.
not a luxury. And um, but if you do have the ability and the fortitude to play test your game a lot, this stuff will be yielded out normally.
Yeah.
90% of it.
It's just
Because
hard to
your
imagine
team
over
is going to
4
have
years.
no, and I think because we know that this development had a lot of trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
I can imagine, you know, that not yielding what it needed to, even if they did
Plus a
play
single
test.
player, experience. So it's like, are you
Yeah,
seeing that whole like end to end of the 20 something hour game loop, right? I mean, I spent basically 12 hours to finish the game from where we were last time, and I think I'd spent 10 or
yeah,
11 to get to that point. And I played all the levels, but I also got nearly all the figments, and at least 12 hours. Might have been more. Might have been more like 14 or 15.
yeah.
I'd have to look. But it was just, a big chunk of time to really dive in and like, I'm going to get it
That's
all,
true. For
So,
for fresh eyes to see the whole campaign, that I will go back. I will go back to my luxury comment.
right.
It's
Yeah.
to
That makes it a luxury.
have a fresh eyes feedback, mid to late development, play the whole game to find this stuff is a luxury. And that's actually, I think I've said on the podcast before, that was actually one of the reasons I wanted to work at Microsoft first party, is because
Right.
their usability lab is top of class. I was like, I want access to that thing,
Right.
regardless of Halo. I was like, I want to, whatever I'm working on. And it's true. Like, you could send a build to them and they will have somebody play the freaking whole thing,
Right.
and that is a luxury.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, let's get back to the levels, because we got to get to takeaways as well. And we should spend the most time on Gloria's Theater, because it's the one that we both did, and then I can sort of briefly talk about the ones that you didn't get to, and sort of the end of the game type stuff. So yeah, tell me about Gloria's Theater. It's definitely a weird one. There are things like it in Psychonauts 2 that are, I think, more successful, but have a similar vibe. So I was kind of comparing them in my mind, when I was playing it, as opposed to on paper. I don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, go ahead and get us started on Gloria.
Well, the interesting, I like the, not even just interesting, but the, like, I will say, flabbergasting thing about the level, other than the ending section, which is difficult in the catwalks, but not very long, I guess, in the grand scheme of it, is pretty traditional platformery and frustrating in this game. But the bulk of the level for me was just the stage and the little backstage area. And like we've talked about throughout the series, I could not believe it. I could not believe that this was the level, that I am just on this stage. I am so the way it's set up, you come in and there is a set. I don't think the set's there originally. You go back, you find the muse for Gloria to try to inspire her to, to act, etc. And there's a critic that is, I won't go through the whole thing, but the critic is the big antagonist and preventing the muse from succeeding. Turns out there's a reveal later that the critic is actually behind it all, etc. But the big flabbergasting element for me is that, it's not a linear level. It's not a you're not running through a level like a lot of the other ones. Even some of the surprising ones, like the Lungfish episode, I was going to say episode, but level, or they've all had a bit of linearity to them.
Right.
Beginning, middle, and end, ends in a boss. But this is like, you're kind of, other than getting to the catwalk, you're doing a bunch of stuff on this stage, and it's just a big open stage. And you are able to call down different sets that are, and then there's these whole performances from these characters in these costumes. I'm still not quite sure who those people were, what those costumes were. But anyway, and they have a script that in each case is probably a little too long for my taste.
Right.
Yeah, and then you can actually change, you actually, there's this lighting system you turn on, or this light that you turn on with a candle, I think. And you can actually flip the sort of polarity of the set that is on stage at any given time, to sort of dark and light, tragedy comedy.
Tragedy comedy for
Um,
sure.
and yeah, and the masks on the light are tragedy and comedy masks a la theater, which proves my point that this is theater, not opera. But anyway,
I'm just saying opera is theater. That's all. I'm not.
Square and rectangles and all that.
Yeah.
So then you have this sort of this flow chart, if you will, or this kind of like, multiplying effect where it's like, okay, every set has two states. And then there's the script. You get a script from the critic. He's clearly sabotaging things. And then there's scripts, I think, hidden on each set that you have to get. And there's sort of linearity. There's a stage manager who is actually, you're giving these scripts to, and you get a bullhorn to kind of reinitiate to rehearse each of them.
It's to prevent basically having to go all the way back down to her and tell her to run a different. It's a basically a fast travel kind of mechanic.
Right.
It's like instead of going down and telling her and climbing back up here and switching the lighting when I want to and having to go back and forth and back and forth, that did feel like a playtest thing of like, it's really annoying to have to go down here, and it's like, okay, well, let's make an item that that just lets you have dialogue with this person from afar, which I thought was clever. Yeah.
So they perform the scripts. So it's very adventure gamey to me. There is some light combat when you're in the dark. The tragedy versions of the players will attack you, kind of, right? And there's the dogs and stuff, and some bats and stuff. So there is some combat along the way, but it's not, and you are
it's some platforming.
There's a little bit of platforming, jumping on the sets depending on the state, and
there's one place where you have to go up a number of swinging things as well, kind of pachinko style, only in reverse.
Yeah, and even just jumping on, there's a dragon that is defeated on the set, and that's kind of wasn't clear to me. But so, I mean, long story short, it was a very interesting level and unexpected, and the structure of it was unlike, as far as in this genre, unlike anything I'd played.
Yeah.
And there, as we talked about earlier in the episode, it felt very much like an adventure game jammed into this game.
There were steps where it's like you have to figure out how to get the knight to appear
on the right set on
the right set to vanquish the dragon. And there are clues about how these things are supposed to play out. I think all of it is supposed to be a like self mythologizing, about her history and how she came to be a star. And then because it's all about
the scripts all deal with that,
being separated from her mother, and like in one it's good.
I mean, you're in her mind, right?
And you're in her mind, and you're trying to silence her inner critic, right? Of course, is the whole deal. Is like the reason why her muse won't act is because the inner critic is, has driven her from it. So
it's very clever. It's very clever. And then there turns out to be a phantom, of the opera. Okay, so maybe opera comes back in.
Well, the opera is the building, so
sure. Okay. And then it ends up being the critic, and then the critic is the boss, and it's a hilarious boss fight. And he's criticizing your gameplay. It's really funny. And all told, it's just what you've been saying the whole series is like every level is unexpected, and you have no idea what's going to happen. And I don't know if I've ever played a game where I cannot even guess. I would have no idea what's coming, and I'm surprised every single level. And I am bummed I didn't get to finish, because it sounds like that continues until the very end. So, and of course, being a theater person, I was appreciative of all of these themes and such. But the one thing I will say is that because goes back to a point that we've talked about before, and it'll come back up in my takeaways, because they swung for the fence every time. Coming into the theater level, I really most of the time didn't fully understand what was going on, and so I did finish the level eventually, but it was like, I guess this is probably the script I need for this and this, and I kind of like I do often with puzzles and adventure games, I brute force my way through it,
right,
and eventually through process of elimination finished it. And I didn't feel great. I didn't feel great about that.
Yeah, I think I think all the clues are there,
Sure.
but there were definitely points where I was like, what have I missed here? I've clearly missed a step, and I would be thinking like, oh right, there was in the other play this happened, so I need to somehow do that in that play after this or before this or whatever. It was just kind of like
Yeah,
connecting those dots.
it's
And
really interesting
yeah,
flow. It's just really tricky to teach the player about
exactly.
that stuff.
Yeah, and it is a little under supported like there's not a lot of lines explaining exactly what you should be doing. You're just kind of, the one thing is that there's a balloon to take you up into a hot air balloon to take you up into the rafters that I think they hit really firmly. Like this is the final objective, but like
Yeah.
a lot of the steps along the way are very difficult. Yeah, so I'll quickly run through the other levels, and you can just kind of ask questions about them. But in the order that I played them, the next one I played was Waterloo World. This is with Fred Napoleon, who has a Napoleon complex, which he has because the guard, who is a a nurse or an orderly at the now abandoned insane asylum that they're all in, uh, he couldn't beat him at a board game, and it drove him insane. So he used to be an orderly himself, and then because he's a Napoleon, he thought he was supposed to be good at these strategy games, and he keep getting beaten at chess or whatever. So you go into his mind, and it's like a war map, that they would do with miniatures and things back in this period of time. I was telling Tim in pre-show that at the I think it's at the L'Hôpital. There's in Paris. There's um, it's a former hospital for veterans that was established in the Napoleonic era, and there is a part of the museum in there that has these like topographical maps. They are they look like the actual location they were fighting, and they would move, like in a wargaming setup. They would figure out their strategy, based on the terrain and the time of year and all of those things. It was like a strategizing thing, because they couldn't
And those
just,
are the real versions they
those were
have
the
of
real
them.
versions. Yeah. And so this is in the game basically. And Fred inside his mind is playing one of these games with Napoleon, who is his great, 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 great grandfather or something like that.
What the heck?
Yeah. So anyway, you go in, and there's the two of them. They're sitting on either side of this big board that's kind of like an arena bowl type looking thing. And the fun thing about it is, because of the way Psychonauts plays with the fact that you're in these kind of like dreamy states, you can basically jump up and climb into this arena. There's like a ladder hanging over the side, and as you climb down the ladder, you become an appropriate size to be like one of the big pieces in this level. And you're kind of walking around, but you haven't found any figments or anything like that. You can just see the board, which is 3D models of buildings. It establishes what you're supposed to do, which is you're supposed to win this game for Fred, basically, which means taking this castle. And throughout the whole level, Napoleon is like goading Fred about how terrible he is. I mean, it's definitely like, it is that whole like you're small person, kind of, and Fred is really beaten down by this. But the next thing that you realize is that, if I interact with any of the buildings, I actually go down to be that size, so that now I'm a size where that building is like a building, instead of a piece on a board. And you can actually, Raz can see himself as he does that. It's like there's big Raz, and then you see small Raz in the foreground, and you zoom in on small Raz, and big Raz disappears by the time you've turned around. So it's just like, it's totally wild, and it's basically a bunch of like adventure gamey type stuff of satisfying conditions in the small world to that you have to go back and forth the different sizes to solve, plus some actually moving of pieces on the board and things like that. So it's not a strategy game. It tells you you have to get this piece next. You have to move this piece, next to the soldier, in order to deal with that. And then a new soldier will appear from Napoleon's side, and you'll have to deal with that. You have to, at one point, there's a hearty knight who has to be the one who takes the castle, because only a knight can take the castle. And the only way to bring him into the battle is to collect these snails, who are like really enthusiastic and talking about how they're going to win the war. And the way they're going to win the war, unfortunately, is to become a meal for the hardy knight who really likes escargot. That's a whole thing. You have to bring like the pot of when you achieve things, like pieces appear on this board that represent the thing that you achieved. So there's just a series of things. It's very clever. I'd kind of like if you had asked me before we started playing it, I would not have remembered this level. But as soon as I saw the cutscene, I was like, oh yeah, oh my God, I forgot about this one. And I remembered how much time I spent in this particular world because it has a lot of figments, and I found them all.
It's just the way you describe it is like you almost can't believe you're talking about a video game.
I know. Yeah.
It's like, what? What's going on? It's just, but I think you kind of can say that about many of the levels.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is, but in a good way,
Yeah,
it's just, it's so unexpected. Yeah. Wow.
And then the other one that's inside people's minds is Black Velvetopia, which is the one I was really hoping you would get to, just because aesthetically, in terms of the art direction for it, it was unlike anything I had seen at the time. It is a world that looks like Black Velvet. So much of the backgrounds of walls and just the environment, like it's set in a town, Black Velvetopia, and there's a bull that is running through it, like in Spain, right, with the running of the bulls. Mm-hmm. So there's this bull running through the streets, and that's the foil. And like you're constantly doing the platforming to try to figure out how to move kind of up this one street so that you can, gather figments, but also advance the adventure gamey stuff, find the other collectibles and things like that. But it's all basically set in this little town. And there are paintings that you can like put on hooks in the world, and they will appear. So like there's a guitar that will appear that becomes basically a ladder. It becomes a giant guitar that extends up so you can get to a higher point. There's some vines that you can do something particular with.
How do you put those on the hooks?
They are paintings that you buy from vendors in the different little neighborhoods, little side streets. So you buy these paintings for arrowheads, and there's so many arrowheads, and like you're constantly getting arrowheads. So it's like this is the point of the game where arrowheads no longer mattered. So you're buying the paintings for for 20 arrowheads or 75 arrowheads or whatever, and you're just buying these paintings. There's some that are just roses, and you can hang them on the wall in these spots on the wall where you can hang paintings and get a rose. And there are these women who close their windows when the bull runs by. But if you give them a rose, they will allow you to come in. Otherwise, they'll just shut the door when you come near. So if you hand them a rose when the bull's not coming, then they are another way you can move up the street, because you can just go to the windows where you have already given a rose. And so there's like these different ways to advance up through the level, which is very clever. But it's the look that really, the bull is like black, and then there's this everywhere on it is like neon colors. So it's with nothing kind of in the background, and it's a really dark black. Like they must have been doing something where it's like the black parts are unlit. Maybe nothing is lit and everything is just color. But it really works. Like it's surprising what you could do on a PS2 or an original Xbox as far as that goes, if you had the thinking behind you to come up with the art direction, because it looks amazing. I remember in the day just being like, I can't believe that they did this. And in fact, I think those systems tended to have like things on the graphics chip that you could do. You might remember this from the PS2 because we did it in Jedi Starfighter, where you can like leave a trace behind, like an alpha trace it's like a cheap motion blur, but it's like a full screen thing.
Yeah.
We used it for slowing time in Jedi Starfighter. But there you could do all kinds of effects like that with these systems. I don't remember what the 360, the original Xbox could do, whether it could do that sort of thing. But it was a thing that, and this really popped. It's like because the glowy parts would persist, right? And you could see them leaving a trace and things like that. Plus, we were on CRT still. So anyway, so that's that world. It's about a guy who had his heart broken in high school and has never gotten over it. So it's also kind of like, what? There's a whole backstory about why and who the bull is and all of this stuff. So
Wow.
That's his anger. It's anger, his anger problem. And he can't finish a painting because whenever he gets to a certain point, he paints a bull over everything. So he just gets
Oh my
angry and
gosh.
paints this bull over it in the real world. And so that's the thing that you're helping him deal with. All
Is
of
he the
those.
other guy with the Napoleon guy? I met two
No,
people.
the other guy there is the guy who's guarding the elevator up into the insane asylum. His name's like Quincy, I think, or Quentin.
Kind of a little guy.
Yeah, a little guy. He's the one who's nearsighted that I told you about in pre-show,
Oh,
where
okay.
you need to meet these three people and get their objects. So in the case of the painter, he needs to finish this painting of Dr. Lobato, so that you can use that as if you are Dr. Lobato, because the guard is nearsighted. And so if you can put on a painting and a smock like Dr. Lobato wears, which is like a straitjacket, which is what Fred has on, and a claw for a hand, which is the trophy, which is basically like an Oscar or Tony or something that that Gloria has, her award. If you have those three things, you can get past them because you put them all on your body and it looks like you're Dr. Lobato to him. Anyway, he sort of squints. It looks like you're in the clairvoyance.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, I'm going to speed run the Insane Asylum and the Meat Circus. One is a real world location. One is an inside mind location. The Insane Asylum is just that. It's it's a rundown insane asylum, but it's got a lot of places where the geometry is really kind of twisted and things are really disconnected, and like there's huge holes in places. The platforming in there is very difficult and annoying. I found myself falling down like multiple floors many times and just being like, oh man, I have to climb all the way up there again. There are these mice that come in and blow up and do damage and things like that. It's very irritating. But at the top is Dr. Lobato, and he has an assistant named Shigor, who has been making capture the kids to take their brains so he can make these death tanks. I guess I'm not really clear on who. I mean, Lobato's a separate guy from Oleander, but
Yeah, I was gonna say
they're
who.
working. I guess they're working together. Like Lobato can do the work to get the brains out, which is a difficult thing to do, but Oleander has the plan. I guess that's really what it is. So is Oleander's plan and like tanks, Lobato's technique for brain removal, which is just silly to say. That's not super well connected, the dots on that. After all of that, you get Sasha 9 and Mia are there, and you free them, and Oleander confronts you, and he's got this he's been debrained himself. He comes out of this like huge explosion that happens. He's been debrained himself through sneezing powder, and then up rolls the tank that his brain landed in, and it's one of these death tanks. And so you have to fight that still in the real world. It's sort of like Tron, the part where they had to blow away the things to get to the master control program. The panels, that were protecting him. It's sort of like that. You have these rocks that you're throwing telekinesis to get through the rocks, and then you have to pyrokinesis to blow away the walls, and then you can like do some damage to him. You do that 3 times, and you move on. So now you move on to the final brain in the game, which is a mix of your brain and Oleander's brain. And this is called the Meat Circus. And the Meat Circus is notorious for being one of the most difficult platforming challenges in video games, mostly because of, 2 factors. One is camera in part of it, and the other part is where you have to escort child Oleander.
Oh no.
Child Oleander had a father who was a butcher, hence the meat. Raz has escaped from the circus and run away to summer camp. So the circus part is from his childhood. I mean, he's still in his childhood, but is from his, psychology. Wow. And it mixes those 2 things together. So you have a circus that everything's made out of meat. I mean, there's things that are like tents and things like that, and there's like some chairs and things like that in places. There's poles. There's stuff that's kind of more normal, but the real gist of it all is that Oleander wants to protect his rabbit, Apparently, when he was a kid, he had pet rabbits, but they were actually being grown to go to the butcher shop. And this is his trauma. So you've got to escort this kid with his bunny rabbit through this first part of the level. And basically what happens is like there'll be a part at the beginning, for example, there are like these enemies that are being generated, and they're going to attack him. They're focused on him. And you have to allow him, protect him long enough, and then telekinesis, hold his bunny in place. Or I think you can also stun the bunny with the concussion, which is the final skill you get. Final merit badge. So you have to do that. But then as soon as he gets to his bunny, he has a beanie, propeller hat, and he'll fly up into the air and go to another level where he is now unprotected. And you have to do the platforming to get to him, and then, defeat any enemies that are around him, and then get him the bunny again. So you're
or you fail,
or you fail and have to start again at the very beginning of this section.
So it's a really difficult platformer. Where you are also escorting.
Yes,
wow.
It's ridiculous. It's really, really bad. It's not as bad as what's coming. So in terms of difficulty, but this is really hard, and I spent a lot of time on it, and there were definitely there's basically, I think, there's one where you start, then you go to that level, there and there. I think it's basically you have to save him 4 times on the way up. So it's like you do it the first time, you get pretty good at that, and then it's like, oh, and now I'm like, how quickly can I get to the second part? He does, I think, heal quite a bit in between, so you it does kind of reset the challenge. It's not like you're failing from the beginning and you just got to let it play out. But sometimes he can fail really fast, and you're just like, I hardly had any time. It's not well balanced.
Why do you think it's so hard?
It is so hard because you have to get to him fast enough, and the platforming is difficult enough that that's not easy to do.
Oh no, I meant like, why do you think they made it so hard?
Oh, I have no idea. I think by the time that they developed this level, they were all too good at the game. Because one of the things I actually had to look up with the final part. So you do all of that, you save him, you fight his dad in the level who's this like huge butcher with these huge knives, and you can use the shield to like prevent damage from that and stun him and stuff like that. The bosses are actually exactly what I would want out of end of game bosses. They're not that hard. There's a little trick to them. Once you figure out the trick, you're just executing the trick a few times, and you're done. And I'm like, perfect. But all the platforming stuff is way too difficult. It's like, it's a final exam, but you've been taking Psychology 101, and this is like a graduate level class that you're getting the final exam for. It's like you skipped a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I never got that good at that stuff. And it's usually not punishing. It's usually like not a big deal if you fail, right? So, and here it is. It's very punishing. The second part is where you're confronting Raz's history, and like this, he has this belief that his father doesn't believe in him because of a psychic ability, because the psychic cursed them. So it's like he has this unresolved feeling about his dad, that his dad maybe doesn't believe in him, and doesn't want him to become, he wants him to stay with the circus and not become a psychic. And so there's an evil dad in the world, voiced by Armin Shimmerman, who only appears at this point in the game. And he's basically saying, well, keep up with me. It's not a race per se, but there is a rising water level at this point in the game. And if you fail at any point in the platforming, you fall into the water and you have to start at the beginning of that section, which is also ridiculously difficult. In particular, there is a section, the first part of it's not too bad. You're just kind of chasing him and like jumping across trapezes and things like that. That part is actually not that bad. But then you get to a point where there's like this tunnel, a climbing tunnel of nets that you have to climb, and then there are gaps and you have to jump the gap, but you can't. I had to look this part up because I was like, I can't get there. Like, you have to jump and like float your balloon and then land on it. But the key is, and this is what I couldn't figure out and had to look because it was like 10 o'clock Sunday night. You have to jump away from the net in order to be able to bounce and use the balloon, the float balloon. And that is not, that is not described in any way, helped in any way. I was jumping off. I was like, I know I have to jump this gap, but when I jump the gap, I can't do a double jump or use the balloon. What am I doing wrong? And I just I beat my head against it. And occasionally it would work, but it was just because the camera happened to be in a good position where my jump pushed me away from the thing. And, it was bad, Tim. It was bad. It was bad back then when I did it, and it was bad when I did it here. In the end, there's a second boss that is the mix of the two. The two characters are involved. Like one's a giant. There's a giant version of the two of them, I guess, that mix together into one body. And you use invisibility there, and then you're also your dad, your real dad, not your mental projection of your dad, not your idea of your dad, comes in to help you, and he's actually also psychic. And he's like, no, I would never. Of course I love you and I want you to succeed in whatever you want to do. And it's like a really heartwarming moment. And then you have the boss, and the boss is pretty easy and you defeat it. And then you just go into a bunch of end game cutscenes, basically. At that point, after that point, there's no interactive sections. You beat this final boss, and then there's a bunch of story stuff, which has Raz inducted into the Psychonauts, and then it sets up a second game, which we would not have for 18 years.
Well, we know a little something about cliffhangers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There are cliffhangers that have been unresolved for longer. So
yeah. Wow. I mean, end of a game.
Yeah.
It's like probably developed late.
Yeah.
Didn't get a lot of play testing,
right.
like
under the gun. Yeah,
the team's better at the game than they should be.
They know how to jump off of these things so that you can use the ability. Like that's not something that's ever taught. Yeah. Like most of the time, you're just jumping and double jumping, like to reach things or to cover a greater distance. You're never having to jump off of a thing that I can think of in the whole game.
And then use the balloon.
And then do a double jump and then use the balloon to reach. And there's like on the netting, this is even crazier, on that netting that you're climbing around, which is like bone or something. There are also fireballs moving around on it. So you have to move around. There's not like a ton of them, but there's one on the first few, and then there's one that has a couple or something like that. Oh, and then I forgot this. There's also a ladder that if you don't get to it in time, this also really annoyed me. So there's this ladder, it's really cool when you execute it, but I failed it a couple times, which meant I had to do this part of the game again. From a ladder point, there's things that happen after this climbing the netting that are somewhat difficult, but they're a lot less difficult than the netting. There's like some like levitate, float up in the air with a steam vent type thing, and then fall through a fire, ring of fire, and then some trapezes and stuff like that. But if you don't do all of that fast enough, there's a final point where you're on this giant stake and there's a ladder off the end of it. And basically the ladder is like a roller coaster where once you get on it, you just are holding down as if you're climbing down the ladder, and it's just sliding. But it does this crazy pattern, which goes way down and then way up, and it kind of turns over in the air. And then eventually you go up to another level. If you don't get to it in time, the water level has risen too high and you'll hit the water as you're going down the ladder. And I'm just like, this is not cool, guys. What are you doing to me here? Like, I got here, let me.
And you wouldn't know that. Probably.
You wouldn't know. Well, there's two things. One is you wouldn't know that. And actually, I think if you go straight to the ladder, they probably have it so that if you go straight to the ladder, you're fine. Like you land there and like the water gets set, in smoke and mirrors fashion to be low enough that you're fine. But it's still climbing. They still want it to be climbing. But what happens is as you cross the piece of meat to the ladder, there's a camera cut to show the other side of the ladder that you're going to descend, because it's kind of hanging off the far side of this piece of meat. And so as soon as you get to that point, you're now pushing in the wrong direction. And to me, that pushed me. So I fell off the edge and was hanging. And then climb back up past the line again. So the camera switched back, and then I switched again. And I'm just like, what are we doing? What what are we doing? What are we doing? So it was a real moment. Like every part of it, I was like, I understand how we got here, but I'm not happy that I'm here. So yeah, it is
I
one of
mean,
those
sounds
levels.
like a lot of lessons learned in there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, I always am bummed that I don't, that I don't finish as
Yeah,
many
you wouldn't have
games.
finished this one anyway.
But in this case, I'm like, you're giving me anxiety just listening to you describe it.
It's very anxiety inducing. There's no doubt about it. So I will, I've released my anxiety over all of that, and I've let go. I've searched out my feelings and let go of the anger because I didn't want it to lead to hate.
Oh boy.
And so I'm ready for our takeaways.
Okay.
As I hope you are as well. This is, of course, at the end of a series, the part where we look back on the game we've played and talk about the things that we would take away or that we think are of value. And I actually forgot one topic I wanted to mention. So before we even do that, we don't have time to discuss it in detail. I just want to say Peter McConnell's music in this, fantastic throughout. We never talk about music enough. I actually own this CD. Back then, people bought CDs. And I bought it because I was like, this is so good. He does this klezmer music for the circus stuff. I mean, every level has its own thing. And I think it's amazing. And I just wanted to mention it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's I think for me also, I agree. Thank you for bringing it up. It's a key identity for the game, I think, as well. And his music often is. We've talked about him before, and there's a set of composers that were from LucasArts.
Right.
He is one of them. Clint Bajakian is another one.
Yeah.
And there's
and then of course like Jesse Harlan, who we worked with on
Jesse Harlan. Yeah.
Revolt Commando and we had on the podcast with Dave Collins. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's there. We talked a lot about the visual design of this game and the story of this game, but I agree with you that the music is another element that makes the game what it is from an identity standpoint. And that's hard. That isn't always the case for composition, right?
Yeah.
It's often there to help support something that's happening rather than being as much of an identifier. But in this case, yeah, I remember thinking of it, like even in Boyd's level as an example, is one that, it gives you that secret agent feel.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so
right
good.
Spot on.
Yeah. He's just fantastic at that. He's one of those people, I've heard him in other interviews and things like that, who he can play basically any instrument under the sun and probably owns one at this point. And he's just a great composer, and he just kind of like, he'll go and pick references. I mean, this is a game that has tons of weird references, and he'll be like, well, where do I go for that? I go back to Japanese monster movies for Godzilla, and things like that for the Lungfishopolis or what have you. And it's Spanish stuff with it's very like flamenco, that kind of strummy Spanish guitar feel for the Black Velvetopia, because he's a Spanish artist, because that's kind of a Mexican thing, I think, right? Black Velvet.
Yeah, I think there's some of the Day of the Dead art.
Right, exactly.
Is, and if you like,
and that of course comes from Grimm with Tim Schafer. Right. So yeah. Right. Anyway, I mean, when you meet Ford Cruller in his lair, it's like this. It almost sounds like a Western, and it's like, how does this all fit together? And it just works. It sets the tone of every space. And I'm so glad I remembered at the last minute, because it is such a huge part of my experience of the game. And one of the things I love about, especially going back to the levels where I feel a little, less pressure. I'm just going back to kind of clean up, and I can just kind of bask in the level. I felt that way about Brutal Legend as well, but in that case, it's all licensed music. It's all like, heavy metal and stuff. It's really fun just to like drive around and listen to effectively the radio. But in this game, going back to every location is just like, what do I feel like listening to? And it's really fun for that. So anyway,
And he did all the music for the game?
I believe he did. Yeah. I can quickly look, but I'm pretty sure it's all Peter McConnell.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I would just
So all right, let's then turn to our takeaways, and as is common, I will give it to you first, sir.
Okay, my first one is, what if there were no limits to what you could do? And and obviously it's like just asking myself that question as a developer, playing this game, and again I didn't get to finish to see some of those sound, very unique levels toward the end, but even up to where I played, it's like, I don't know, in game development, we're so often thinking about limits and constraints and, building in a production oriented way. Maybe myself, even though I'm generally a creative director or designer, I should maybe be thinking more outside the box sometimes. But, to get a game done, you do try to keep those things in mind. But it feels like that just, imagine the ideas that didn't make it in.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, it's just like it just seems like a game. And this is a partner topic to my second takeaway that I'll get to after you, but it just feels like a game where there just were no limits. They did whatever they wanted. It's like, what if we did a Godzilla level? What if we did this weird conspiracy theory level? What if we did a theater level? And I will actually kind of, because you've already mentioned it, and it's a franchise that's near and dear to my heart, Hitman.
Mm-hmm.
There is an element in Hitman where they have a similar mentality.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
They say, well, where is he going to go now? We can go anywhere. We're going to go to suburban America. We're going to go to an opera house. We're going to go to wherever.
Yeah, they revisit that with the Bond game as well, which I played recently and would
recommend
to you. Yeah.
Well, but my point there is that they still do it within the confines of what a Hitman game is.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to go to this location.
Still, here's the box. It's
here's the
same big kind of weird box, but it's yeah.
Yeah, the same core game, right? But here it's like every level you don't even know exactly what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Other than a third person character moving through the world. So yeah, it's just this concept that I think all creative people should be reminded of like, try to shed those preconceived notions of limitations, and at least in the early days to see if you can. And they did. Yeah. And it's a feat. It
is a feat. Yeah. I mine is kind of related. I think it's, for me, it's the way I put it was, it's a cohesive game driven by its narrative and themes. So the reason why you get to do anything is because you've chosen a narrative and theming, and themes, like literary themes, like you would discuss, like in this case of like these different traumas or psychological, I don't know, disorders, or, and that's maybe even too strong, but psychological issues, let's just say, to be a little milder. And that allows you to go anywhere. But it still feels like a coherent thing. It's like that is attached to this summer camp, and the summer camp is that, for people who can do this thing, which is to, they have psychic powers that can go into people's brains, basically, if they're helped. I mean, there's a device for it, but because they have these mental powers, they can do these things, and they wouldn't be able to survive, I guess, in the brain environments if not. And it's because it takes that setting and those themes, and those choices in narrative and narrative design, that you're able to go anywhere. If you don't have the idea, to do that, then you can't get there. I mean, I could imagine having, there are certainly games that go all over the place that, don't really justify what they're doing. And this, I feel like it justifies all these choices. Now, there will be a follow-up takeaway that is related to this for me. But for me, like, the fact that you can go to anywhere is motivated by the way they thought about this as a world and setting and characters first. In fact, back when this came out, so probably in 2006, Tim Schafer gave a talk at GDC, which was about how he used, do you remember Friendster?
Yeah.
It was like an early social media site where you sort of connect with people. You could have a profile. It was pre-Facebook. You could connect to people and like share like interests and stuff like that. And it was basically just the social graph kind of a little more clearly. He actually put all of his kid characters into the game, into Friendster rather, and developed them using Friendster, and like who had relationships with each other and like how they were related, and used that as a development tool for himself to like how to think about all these characters who, like I said, do have stories that we didn't really get into as much, but and even I think some of the adult characters, because with the insane asylum and all of that kind of all connects as well in some ways. But anyway, it's I've just always been impressed by that. It's what makes me love the game so much, is that way that those choices drive the invention. So as a reader, it's something I love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the cohesiveness is actually my third one, so I don't know if I have much to add there. So I'll bring that one in really quickly because I won't need to talk about it later because you just covered it. But really appreciating how cohesive everything was, and as somebody in game design who, as you know, and probably creates a lot of frustration for you sometimes, I'm always trying to explain why we're doing something, even if it's not needed in a game. Myself and our narrative director, and usually overthinking it, but I love it if you can crack the nut of like having something be motivated. And in this game, the most hilarious thing ever, because of the era, there was this ridiculous concept in many, many games of your water is death.
Oh, right.
And it was just like became
it's just because we didn't want to animate swimming.
Yeah, Master Chief, he's in armor. He can't go in water.
Yeah.
Why would he be able to go in water? He's in super armor.
Yeah.
Well, no, but the armor, he's like, can't he just like, doesn't have jets? You should. I had so many debates about this, by the way, in my life, about why Master Chief can't go in water. But in this game,
this is why can't the Eagles just carry him? Why can't the Eagles just carry them to Mount Doom?
Exactly, yeah. But it's like in this game, the team decided to make dying in water, which is a video game character trope, a core part of the trauma of the game and the story.
Yeah.
And it's like totally justified. But it's like in other games, it's like, no, it's just danger, just death. So don't jump in the water.
Exactly.
So it's just so funny. It's like, it's almost like this meta commentary, like, troll that they're doing to everyone else who'd never solved that
or never explained it. Yeah.
Or never explained it. Yeah. So
they support it. They go all the way to support it as well. Like, there's this hand that reaches up to indicate like the curse and remind you like that there's this, it's still holding, hanging over them in the next game. Right. So that curse doesn't go away. The end of this game actually totally sets up. Yeah. There's a whole level about it. The end of this game actually, like I said, completely sets up the next game to a degree that I was like, oh yeah, I forgot all this stuff was in here. It like everything, like the next one just picks up like it just happened. You go into in the first level of Psychonauts 2, you're in Dr. Lobato's brain. Spoilers for Psychonauts 2.
Wow.
And it's all about teeth because of his dental things. It's so crazy, but it's like it literally just picks up right where it left off. It's wild. It's so wild. Anyway.
So I'll just do, I guess, now my last one here really quick, and then you can take over the last two. But my counterpoint to my first one is when some of the core things get in the way of the joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more of a critical takeaway, I guess, but it's a reminder for me, I think, in that if you have some of the core verbs or activities that you're doing are for me as a player, at least, I'll give that caveat, for me as a player, are unpolished, and camera being another part of this equation for me in this game, that can take away from the amazing elements of the first takeaway I gave. It's like, yes, they did it. They did whatever they wanted because, like you said, they had a world to be able to do that, and every level was amazing. But because some of those core moment to moment was so challenging and so unpolished, I really had a hard time sometimes enjoying what I wanted to enjoy.
Yeah.
It got in the way. And in an adventure game, because those got so distilled down to the way you interact with the game, especially in the LucasArts games versus maybe Sierra, which always kind of was a little janky. I think LucasArts figured out the GUI of it all. That was never an issue.
Right.
But here, because there's a skill element and an action element, it's like a little bit of chocolate in my peanut butter situation. Even though I do like that combination personally, that metaphor works. It's sort of like so yeah. So I had a hard time enjoying some of the splendor because that stuff gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I will actually. I mean, I'll do my negative takeaway as well, which is, it also it pairs with my first one and with yours, which is that they are maybe biting off too much
Yeah,
for them to be able to do. I mean, it was a difficult game to make. We haven't really. I mean, we've kind of mentioned the difficult conditions under which they were making it, not just as a new studio, but because of financial challenges and like starting with one publisher and moving to another. Um, there's some history on all of that stuff you can go look up for yourself, including when Tim Schafer won his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Game Developers Choice Awards. He talked about some of that and that challenge. And but yeah, I do feel like they had something here where if they had even more time to actually figure out what the rules were around all, like how they had to build all the levels to accommodate their movement mechanics, their to further develop the camera and do more authoring or whatever, more systemic camera work, or even just like authoring so that it worked better. The camera in the world they have, whether that meant wider paths or like auto turning the in that final level, auto turning the camera so you're in a good position as you move around this weird pipe of bone stuff you're trying to jump between. Like it didn't have to go necessarily super far to be better in that way and more forgiving. And I think it's because they were trying so much and fitting so much in because of this, like, well, we can do anything, narrative and themes, you drive everything that we can do. It's just like whatever we can think of, we can do it. Like you pointed out, that they pushed it to a point where the programming was like, under the weight of all of that, just like dying, like just having the hardest time keeping up. So I do feel like there's a point at which you have to like evaluate and say, okay, what do we need to do to make this actually work, to a level of quality, and back then there was also more forgiveness around that as well. So it's
yeah, that's fair. We're judging it by
today's standards,
which it sounds like the second game.
The second game, I think, nails all of this stuff,
Yeah.
and is so much better for that, in terms of the pure movement. So my other positive takeaway, which is sort of linked to my first one, but is that this ties into the relevance and impact today. We already talked about it a little bit, I think, in the first episode, but also around Boyd in particular, which is where it really hit me again. Is this is a platformer with meaning, behind what it's doing, and generating empathy for these minds that you're going into and the suffering that these people have felt. And you probably haven't met, people, who cover all the gamut of psychological issues that are in this game. And some of them are a little more thinly drawn than others. But for the most part, I feel like it's really done in a very empathic way. And, that sort of meaningful platform is a place where indies would thrive, starting just a handful of years later, in the 360 era, in particular with Xbox Live Arcade and then Steam opening up eventually and things like that. So it was just a place where, others would kind of, I think you put it as like having permission to do this, in a game where they might not have before. So, and I think that is, it is, one of those games where, like the Velvet Underground, launched a lot of other video games. If you played it, you're like, I want to make something like, not necessarily like this, but something that has that kind of meaning. And as games got more democratized to build, that also became a possibility. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great one.
All fits together.
Glad you brought it up.
All right, so that's our Psychonauts. I do have one email here. The subject line is for science. It is from one Mystery Dip. And I'm reading it this week because it says, Dear Tim, do you remember what one-liner you gave for my email from last week? Which, to be fair, was 3 weeks ago. Regards, Mystery Dip. P.S. I thought it would be interesting to see if the hypothesis from last week that quotes from games generally don't stick around with us like movies do would be true or not. So, do you remember what your quote was? Of a funny one-liner in video games.
I think it was the Milkman one. It was something. Didn't I just cite? I
think you did. There was that.
I cheated and cited it from that. Yeah. But did I give one further back?
I honestly don't remember myself, Tim. So I do remember mine. I was talking about the one about being the fastest anybody had ever disposed of the companion cube.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. The funny thing, I might have said it then, but for science mystery, you jerk. I think the science here is like, is Tim's memory really that bad? And I think this is proof. But I think I just don't. To repeat it again, for some reason lines are less memorable than moments. Gameplay moments. Gameplay is much more memorable to me, but
all right. Well, I don't know. It's a small sample size, Mystery. So, and of course, I saw this email, 2.5 weeks ago, and so it's, I've just had it in my mind. I was like, I got to remember mine. So,
I don't think I even thought of one. Though,
mine's polluted. I think I remember you looked it up. Or you asked Chad.
I did.
And you didn't have any good answers from that either.
Chad, but, okay. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll go back and listen to the episode. Now I'm curious about what I would have said.
Maybe I'll drop in a clip here.
He's neither milk nor man.
Anyway. Thank you for that. That email, of course, was sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. We also love to get your reviews, and haven't had one in a minute. So if you're out there thinking, God, I really should do a review for those guys before they're gone forever. We never know. That could happen at any time. Now's the time. Get out there and do it. We're also on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitch. My co-host Twitch is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Though, of course, taking a summer break, much needed, I suppose. We have a fan-run Discord. There's a link to that in the show notes, and we've referred to it a couple times. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by the immortal Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, Discord, merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun dancing and saying this week, and good night.
Good night.